There's something eerie about how a life can look perfect on the outside. You see it in the way people carry themselves carefully polished, always poised. The Rutherford family was one of those lives. Everything seemed flawless, towering skyscrapers of success, luxury cars that glided through the streets, and grand celebrations that made it all seem like the American dream come to life. But in the moments between the smiles and applause, there was a reality I could never quite shake off. I'm Emma Rutherford, the one who worked twice as hard for half the praise. While my younger brother, Mason, got everything handed to him on a silver platter, I was the one scraping and clawing to prove I belonged. And I did. I built my career, earned my place in finance. But still, no one saw me, at least not in the way I hoped. I've known for a while that something was wrong. The figures in the family's trust didn't add up. I'd seen reports with my own eyes, some erased, some forged, but like always, I kept my suspicions to myself. I had bigger things to focus on, things I could control, or so I thought. It wasn't until the phone rang that everything began to fall apart. It was my mother. Emma, your grandfather. He's had an accident. Her voice trembled, but I didn't buy it. Not for a second. I canceled my business trip to Chicago, rescheduled meetings, and headed straight for the Hamptons. When I arrived, I found my grandfather, Edward Turner, sitting in his armchair, holding a cup of coffee. "Had you heard I was hurt?" I asked, still reeling. "Your mother's call." He shook his head. "She told you that?" "No, Emma. No one's been hurt. Not here." I sat down beside him, trying to wrap my mind around the absurdity of it all. This was where it started, where I realized how deep the lies ran. This is how I remember it. I spent the next few days in a haze, trying to make sense of what had happened. The picture I had in my head, my family, the perfect facade had cracked open. Edward's quiet reassurance didn't ease the feeling in my gut. I had known for a while that something was off, but I didn't want to admit it. Not until now. I'd always been the responsible one, the one who didn't ask questions, the one who worked late and showed up early, who studied the reports, the balance sheets. But somewhere in those papers, there were gaps. A couple of years ago, I had noticed discrepancies in the Turner Trust Fund reports, small ones, barely noticeable to anyone else, signatures that didn't look quite right, numbers that didn't add up. I thought I was imagining things, but the longer I sat with it, the more I realized I was right. I couldn't let it go any longer. That night, I dug through the old family files, pages and pages of transactions that had never made sense. The more I looked, the more it became clear. Gregory, my father, had been using the trust for personal gain, moving money into Mason's shell companies, funneling funds out of the trust and into places they shouldn't be. I found a few receipts for things that didn't add up: private school payments for Mason, expenses for things I knew we didn't own. It hit me like a ton of bricks. I could barely breathe as I skimmed the rest of the documents. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a misunderstanding. They were stealing from me. There was no more ignoring it. I had to confront this head on, even if it meant losing everything. Emma wasn't going to be invisible anymore. I didn't know what to expect when I picked up the phone the next day, but the words from my mother hit me like a punch to the stomach. "Emma," her voice shook. "Your grandfather, he's had an accident." I could hear the faintest tremor, but I didn't trust it. I was already in motion before she finished the sentence, canceling my flight to Chicago, rescheduling the meetings. The clients would understand. I told myself. This was important. My family needed me. Edward needed me. Or so I thought. When I got to the house in the Hamptons estate, the place felt cold, quieter than usual. It wasn't the kind of silence I'd been expecting after hearing my mother's words. It was normal. Edward was sitting in his favorite chair, newspaper in hand, a cup of coffee resting on the table beside him. His face lit up when he saw me. "Emma, what's this all about? You cancel everything for a fall." He chuckled, eyes twinkling, completely at ease. I stared at him for a second, trying to process. He looked fine, more than fine. No bruises, no bandages, just an old man reading the paper like any other morning. "Mom called," I managed to say, my voice thin. "She said you were hurt." "Badly." Edward leaned back in his chair, his expression shifting. He sighed, like he was tired. "Your mother asked me to lie. Emma said it would keep things peaceful, keep you from interfering." My chest tightened. "What are you talking about?" "She didn't want you here." Edward looked me dead in the eye. "She needed you to stay away." I felt my breath catch. "Why?" The question came out quieter than I wanted it to. He shook his head, rubbing his temples. "She's always been like that. She's got her plans, and you're not in them." "Emma." I didn't need him to say more. I could feel the pieces falling into place. I already knew. I had known for years. But now I had the proof. And I couldn't just walk away anymore. Later that night, I was sitting in the quiet of my apartment, staring at the same Instagram post over and over. Mason's smug grin. My parents, aunts, uncles, cousins, all of them smiling on the white sand of Bermuda. The caption, "Nothing beats family time in paradise." I couldn't stop looking at it. There it was, in bright color, everyone but me. A family vacation, my mother had called it. But now I saw it for what it really was, a pre-merger celebration. They were making deals, planning their next move, signing papers, and I had been left behind. I threw my phone on the couch, frustration boiling inside me. I'd been shut out, deliberately. They didn't even have the decency to pretend I was part of the plan. Not even as a token. The next morning, I couldn't sit still. I needed answers. Needed to find out exactly what they were planning. I made a decision. I was going to the office, and I wasn't leaving until I had the truth. I met with Olivia Matthews, my aunt, the one person who'd always had my back. Olivia was sharp, no nonsense. She'd walked away from the family business years ago, tired of the lies and shady deals. And now she was the perfect ally. "Olivia," I said as I sat down across from her, "I need your help." She didn't ask why or how. She just nodded, already pulling out documents and legal notes from her bag. "Let's tear it apart," she said, her voice firm. I could feel it now, the fight in my bones. This wasn't just about proving I had been wronged. This was about taking back what was mine. It wasn't until later that week, after hours of digging through old family files with Olivia, that the truth hit me like a slap. I had suspected something was wrong, but the reality of it, seeing it all laid out in black and white, was worse than I imagined. We sat at my kitchen table, papers scattered everywhere. Olivia pulled out the final stack of documents, her fingers flipping through legal sheets, spreadsheets, bank statements. My eyes didn't want to believe it, but they couldn't look away. "Emma," Olivia said quietly, "this is worse than we thought." I reached for one of the document's bank transfers. Thousands of dollars funneled from the Turner Trust Fund into what looked like a series of shell companies. These weren't just small amounts, these were huge sums. Money that was meant for me, meant for both Mason and me when we came of age. But instead, it had been drained, funneled into Mason's failed startups, his luxury cars, his life of excess. My future, my inheritance, was being spent on him. Olivia pushed another document toward me. "Here, the trustee payments. Your father signed off on these against your grandfather's wishes. He even changed the trustee status years ago, right when Edward was ill." I felt the room spin, the weight of it all pressing down on me. Gregory had done this. He'd manipulated everything, taken control of the trust with Mason's help, and used it for personal gain. I had been a fool to believe any of it had to have been. How could he? I whispered, the words thick in my throat. Self-dealing, Olivia said, her voice firm. It's illegal. And now, you've got everything you need to make it stick. I stared at the papers, my hands shaking slightly. I had the proof. I could tear this whole thing apart. But the question lingered in my mind. What was I going to do about it? Olivia looked at me, her eyes steady. You know what needs to happen now. You don't let them get away with this. I nodded. It wasn't just about the money. It was about proving that I wouldn't be ignored anymore. The air felt thick with anticipation as Olivia and I sat across from each other at the small conference table, a stack of legal papers between us. I could hear the sound of my fingers tapping lightly against the wood, a nervous rhythm I couldn't stop. The weight of what we were about to do hung heavy in the air. Ready, Olivia asked, her voice steady. But there was something about her that made me feel like she understood how hard this was for me. We both knew that once we made our move, there would be no turning back. I nodded, feeling the weight of the words in my throat. Let's do this. We had spent hours going over the legalities, the clawback provision and the cease and desist order, making sure everything was airtight. Olivia, as usual, had a plan clear, direct, and ruthless. Emma, I know it's a lot to process, Olivia said, her eyes sharp and focused. But this is how we stop them. We file the injunction, present the evidence, and hit them where it hurts right in the public eye. She paused, then leaned in slightly, her tone changing. They think they can get away with it. We show them they're wrong. I wasn't used to this kind of battle. I had spent so many years as the responsible one, working hard, keeping my head down, while my family got by on deception. But now, I was ready to fight back not just for the money, but for everything I had been denied. I took a deep breath, flipping through the papers one last time. The cease and desist order was ready to go. It was simple: stop the transfer of the resort properties to Mason. Or else, the threat of legal action could shake them to their core. Once this hits the board meeting, we'll be in the spotlight, Olivia added. No more hiding behind closed doors. I let out a shaky exhale, nodding. I don't know how they're going to react. Olivia's lips twitched into a brief smile. Doesn't matter. You're not backing down. We drove to the Turner International Resort's headquarters the next morning. The city was quiet, too quiet for my racing heart. I was prepared for the confrontation, but there was still a part of me that couldn't shake the doubt. Was I really ready for this? The security guards gave us a wary look as we walked into the building, but Olivia was a force. She knew exactly how to make her presence known. We got to the boardroom just in time for the meeting to start. Gregory and Mason were already there, sitting with a few other board members, talking in low voices. I held my breath, watching Olivia prepare the papers. This was it. The moment everything changed. Olivia turned to me, her eyes sharp. You're not invisible anymore. Emma. I nodded, and we stepped into the room. It was time to take back what was mine. The room felt cold as we stepped inside. It was one of those sleek, impersonal spaces, filled with polished wood, glass, and chrome. The table in the center was too big for anyone to feel comfortable, but that wasn't what had my stomach in knots. It was the weight of what was about to happen. I could hear the murmurs as we walked in. Gregory was seated at the far end of the table, a few other board members around him. They all paused when they saw us, their eyes flicking from Olivia to me. I wasn't sure if it was the fact that I was there uninvited or that I was holding the cease and desist papers. Olivia stepped forward first, exuding confidence, and I followed behind, trying to keep my hands from shaking. It was a strange feeling, standing there. The room was silent, but it wasn't calm. It was the kind of quiet that only happens before a storm. "Good morning," Olivia said, her voice smooth but firm. We're here to present an injunction to stop the asset transfer to Mason. Gregory's face didn't change. What's this about? He asked, his tone cold, though I could sense the tension behind his words. Olivia placed the papers in front of him. We have evidence of fraudulent activity within the family trust, she said, without hesitation, and we intend to hold all of you accountable for it. I stood off to the side, watching the room closely. The other board members exchanged glances, their discomfort obvious. The heat was already starting to build. Gregory glanced at me, then back at Olivia, a smirk pulling at the corners of his lips. This is ridiculous. You don't have the authority to just walk in here and disrupt everything. Actually, Olivia countered, I do. The trust fund contains provisions that allow for actions to be taken in the event of financial misconduct. And Emma, she paused, turning to me, is the rightful beneficiary. So, we're here to make sure things are done properly. The room was tense now, all eyes on Gregory. The challenge was clear, and there was no easy way out for him. I could see him fuming, but there was a flicker of fear in his eyes, the kind you don't show unless you know you're cornered. Do you want to explain why your name is all over these transactions? Olivia pressed, sliding a set of documents toward him. Gregory's hand trembled just slightly as he picked them up, his expression hardening. This isn't over, he spat, glaring at me. You'll regret this, Emma. But I wasn't backing down. Not anymore. We had them. The truth was out, and now there was no going back. I left the boardroom that day feeling a strange mixture of relief and anticipation, like I'd taken a deep breath after holding it for too long. Olivia and I had made our point, but I knew it wasn't over. It was never going to be over until it was finished. The next few days blurred together. News of the injunction spread quickly. Board members were rattled, unsure what to do with the evidence we'd put in front of them. Gregory tried to maintain control, but it was clear he was slipping. The family's dirty laundry was out in the open, and there was no pretending anymore. Then came the calls. I was sitting at my desk, still sorting through paperwork when my phone buzzed. It was a number I didn't recognize, but I answered anyway. Ms. Rutherford. A voice said on the other end, This is Agent Harris from the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I froze. Yes, we have a warrant for your father's arrest, along with your mother's, for money laundering and fiduciary embezzlement. It took a moment for the words to sink in. I had suspected it had known, deep down, that the law would eventually catch up to them, but hearing it from the FB, I felt like something out of a nightmare. They're at Turner International Resorts now, Agent Harris continued. We've sealed the building, confiscated documents, and arrested both your parents. They're in custody. I couldn't speak for a moment. My mind was running in circles, trying to make sense of it. This was real. They were really facing the consequences for what they'd done. When the call ended, I sat there, numb. Olivia had been right. It was only a matter of time before everything came crashing down. But I wasn't done. Not yet. This wasn't about the arrests or the headlines, it was about the company, the legacy they'd almost destroyed. I had to finish what I'd started. And this time, I wouldn't let anyone take what was mine. I didn't expect the feeling to hit me so suddenly. 1 minute. I was pacing the hallways of the Turner International Resorts headquarters, waiting for the meeting to start. The next? I was standing in front of a room full of board members, staring at the very seat I had been denied for so long, the chair of the CEO. It didn't feel like I imagined it would. I thought I'd be triumphant. The room would feel like victory. But instead, it was surreal. The weight of it all was sinking in. Olivia was at my side, giving me a brief nod of reassurance. She knew what I was thinking. This wasn't just about the money or the titles. It was about reclaiming the space I'd been denied for years. Emma, one of the board members, an older man with a thin mustache, spoke up, his voice shaking slightly. This This isn't how things were supposed to go. Your father was supposed to. Enough. I cut him off, feeling the surge of authority that came with the title I never thought I'd get. We're moving forward. You'll follow my lead now, or we'll be taking this to court. I am the majority stakeholder, and I am the CEO of this company. It wasn't just the position, it was the people in that room. The ones who had doubted me, the ones who'd sided with Gregory and Mason. I could see it in their eyes they were scared now. They weren't sure if I'd be the same good little daughter they could control. But I wasn't that anymore. The meeting wrapped up quickly, a flurry of new decisions, new plans, but there was no mistaking it. The change was real. Turner International Resorts was mine now, and I was taking control, piece by piece. Walking out of that room felt different than I imagined. I didn't feel like a victim anymore. I felt strong, in control, and it was just the beginning. The office was quiet now, a stark contrast to the chaos of the last few weeks. I leaned back in the chair, letting the stillness settle around me. There were no more meetings with lawyers or board members, no more frantic phone calls. I was here, in this space, and it was finally mine. The view from the window of the Turner International Resorts headquarters was still breathtaking, but I didn't see it the same way I did before. It wasn't just about the power anymore. It was about the peace, the calm that came with knowing everything I had worked for, everything I deserved was in my hands. I ran my fingers along the edge of the desk, the smooth wood beneath my touch grounding me. There was a certain quiet strength in this. The world outside was bustling, but in this moment, I didn't need to chase it. I had built my place here. There were no more questions, no more doubt, no more wondering if I'd ever be good enough. I had faced everything: my family's betrayal, the lies, the manipulation, and I had come through it stronger. And maybe, for the first time, I could let go of the need for their approval. I didn't need to prove anything anymore. The door opened softly, and Olivia stepped inside, her usual calm presence grounding me again. She didn't need to say anything. Her smile said it all. I was done hiding. Emma Rutherford's journey wasn't just about taking back what was hers. It was about realizing that sometimes the battle isn't for the things we think we want. It's for the strength to stand in our own truth, no matter the cost.